Of the year.
Well, it's a little sad because it's the final one.
I know. I know.
And yeah,
Doesn't seem like we should be here yet, right?
yeah. I think obviously expectations kept changing during the year, and I was thinking yesterday, like, okay, the last two fallouts have been for losses, and now they're fallout about a loss. But hey, we'll have happier fallouts next year.
Happier fallouts are still ahead.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to go into the recording?
Yep.
All right. Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. We are a podcast that focuses on our hometown St. Louis City SC, but also flyover country and soccer in St. Louis. Today we bring you the final flyover fallout of the year. Started earlier this year as a second weekly episode for ourselves to give everybody a little bit more freedom for us to deep dive into some previous St. Louis City SC matches. I'm joined as always by Santiago Beltran to talk about the final match of the year for the team that finished the regular season 17, 12, and 5 with 56 points, good for the second most by an expansion team in MLS history, excluding the shootout era. A team that set the record for the most wins by an expansion team in MLS history with 17. A team that became the first expansion team in MLS history to win their conference in their inaugural season. A team that joined Atlanta United, LAFC, and the Chicago Fire as the only expansion teams to score 60 or more points in their debut seasons. They produced 16 different players getting on the score sheet in MLS play, tying Charlotte FC for the most different goal scorers for an expansion team in MLS history. We're here to talk about our St. Louis City SC. And Santi, we had to start the pod off with positives. That's my MO. I always like to bring that whenever possible, even on this one of the darkest days that we've experienced as St. Louis City SC fans. It's been a heck of a ride so far for us here on Fallout, but how you doing and how are you feeling after this one?
Doing great, Matt. Doing great. Yeah, obviously still thinking about yesterday, what could have been, and some of those chances had gone in. If maybe Sporting KC had not scored at the end of the first half, but happy that the team had so many accomplishments. Obviously, with all of those accomplishments, expectations go higher, and people are expecting to advance in playoffs. But I have been uh, I have been following soccer for a long time, and I always tell friends that it's a cycle, and sometimes you go through some really good things and the highs, and after that you may go through the lows. And maybe this year we were high all the time, and now with this early elimination in the playoffs, now we're experiencing the lows. But no, you have to stay positive, and a lot of accomplishments. The team will be in an international tournament next year, and the team can build from this season. This was the first season for a lot of players in MLS, first season as a coach for Bradley Carnell. So those things will keep, like, they will keep learning and apply what they learn from this season to next year and following years, and going forward. But it's a process, and like, yeah, next year the team will come back stronger, and we will start the cycle again.
I think that's the hardest thing that everybody's dealing with right now is the recalibration of some of those expectations. When you do so well to start the year, you continue throughout the year holding first place for all but about 6 weeks. And then you get into playoff mode, you're the number one seed, and you go up against a team that you've now faced 5 times in 1 year, 4 times in 2 months, and a rival at that, it's truly become heated. And now you're dealing with the fallout. Like our show is unfortunately named in that regard because it really is the fallout now, and we're left dealing with kind of picking up the pieces of our expectations in a certain way. And I did want to start the show off with a very positive note. Wanted to get all of that out in front to remind people just what this club has done, achieved, and been through this entire year. And we've had some really, really bright spots and bright long moments this season. Even though we're not talking about that necessarily today with what happened this weekend against Sporting, There are a metric ton of things to build off of going forward, and we're gonna get to all of that on our next Flyover Footy this coming week on Thursday when we normally stream. We're going to deep dive into the full regular season, but today we're kind of looking back at that final game to see what went right, what went wrong, and how we capped off our season. And like we always do, Santi, let's look at the starting 11 that did that. We ran out Roman Berkey and net again. Kyle Hebert made a return. Tim Parker, Josh Yarrow, Akil Watts made up our back line. Jabulu Blom, Indiana Vasilev, Edu Leuven, and Jared Stroud made up our midfield. Sam Adeniran and Klaus up top. According to FB Ref, this was the return of the Diamond for the first time since Orlando City on August 26th, the Diamond midfield, with Edu Leuven playing the 10. And the two big things that I think were discussed on here, possibly three if you count the return of Sam also, but this back line that had been 6-0-0 so far during the regular season, Edu Leuven's return to the number 10, and then Sam Adeniran returning to the lineup. So what did you make of this when you first saw it?
I was excited about the diamond midfield. I know you mentioned it was since August, but yeah, I was like, oh, it's been a while since this happened, and it had worked before, and that gave Edu Leuven more freedom to be on the attacking end. So I was excited about that, but I was, even with the 6-0 record, I was surprised by the multiple changes in the backline. I was expecting some changes, and we have talked in the previous podcast, like one of the times the team went on a losing streak, played San Jose, made wholesale changes, and things worked out. So this time around, also a lot of changes, starting with the backline. So I was optimistic. Was surprised that AC Jackson wasn't in the lineup when we made our predictions. We still have him playing, and we have Edu more like as a number 8 with more offensive responsibilities. But it looked like a competitive lineup to me. Having the two up front was also good. So I thought it was a competitive lineup for that decisive game.
And the thing that we really looked for out of this lineup, I remember, is the ability to stretch the field. And Indiana Vasilev spoke to this before the game, the idea of getting in behind the defense, stretching the field more vertically. And what we ended up seeing from this was that, but in the second half. And it was kind of interesting to watch the development of this game in a few of the facets, looking at the desire of St. Louis City to not possess the ball, looking at the ability of St. Louis City to stretch the field, provide some long balls, some service to Sam and Klaus, have them hold up play, and then have Edu Leuven as your number 10 playmaking higher up the field with less defensive responsibilities. Those are a lot of the things that from this lineup we were carrying in. And at the beginning of the match, what we saw was, some of that. Looking at the possession, it definitely skewed towards SKC in the beginning, but if you look at the momentum, and they mentioned this on the broadcast, if you look at the momentum throughout the game, you started to see St. Louis City came on very strong. They started the match up very well. They had multiple opportunities, especially creating set piece opportunities, both in play and off corners in the first 10 minutes or so. But then SKC kind of just took control of the ball. And they did it in a few different ways, because if you look at some of the stats behind the scenes, you're looking at almost an amalgamation of last week against St. Louis, but also a typical Sporting style, including how they scored one of their goals. Their long passes that we looked at last week, where St. Louis City usually dominates long passes in a game, last week SKC was right there. That was the same kind of story for this game, where long passes of over 30 yards, St. Louis was 41 of 96, SKC was 45 of 94. So they progressed the ball in this manner as much as St. Louis for the duration of the game. Both teams were also pretty even in short and medium passes. St. Louis passed the ball an awful lot, especially in the second half. Completed passes into the penalty box for this game, St. Louis had 9, SKC had 8. We were getting the ball where it needed to be over the course of the full 90. You saw Edu Leuven not have to carry the ball as much, although last game he didn't carry the ball well either. This game he wasn't necessarily tasked to do that. If you compare what he did this game to what AZ did last game, AZ was one of the lowest carriers of the game last week with 16. Leuven, while more than that with 22, he still didn't carry the ball near as much as he usually does in the mid 30s or so. Completed passes in this game, you look at Kyle Hebert actually leading the team, moving the ball out of that left back position. He had 40 completed passes in this game. And Akil Watts, who we expected to be one of the more integral parts to move the ball up the field and get higher and impact the game, had the third lowest number of completed passes of the starters with just 17. Jared Stroud had 10, and Sam Adeniran had 7. So those were the two lower than Akil Watts. It was kind of jarring a little bit to see him not as involved in the offense and progressing the ball up. You saw more of the game being played down the left side
Yeah.
with Indiana Vassilev, Kyle Hebert, and then it kind of just didn't make it as far down the field. I felt that Sam was involved early a few times, but then his involvement dissipated quickly.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was one of the reasons for the substitution at the 46th minute. And yeah, once Celio came, it was most of the attacks were through the left side. So it makes sense that Akil only had 17. Most of those probably during the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Second half, it was mostly through that left side with Celio, who I think had a great game. And it just leaves me thinking I have him on my starting lineup. What could have been if maybe he had been involved earlier, but we will never know. Like, you can change multiple things around, and could be the same result. But I
Yep.
really like what I saw from him on the second half.
And it was a necessary sub because in the first half, outside of the first few minutes that I mentioned, the momentum that we had wasn't created by progressing the ball and creating chances in open play from Sam Adeniran. The momentum was created by some of those closed shot opportunities, set pieces. We had 2 early set pieces. We had 2 early corners in the first 8 minutes. There's a lot of opportunities, even though there weren't very many shots. We, in fact, only had 2 shots in the first 8 minutes from Edu Leuven and from Tim Parker. Neither one of them were on goal. After that, it seemed like Sam tried to stretch the field a little bit, but he didn't really make any involvement. He didn't have but 2 completed passes or 7 completed passes, lowest on the team the entire game. And then after that, it kind of, once SKC had their first shot around the 18-minute mark, it really kind of seemed to shift over
It
towards them.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that I noticed is, to me, that first shot, Gadi Kinda's 18-minute shot and his subsequent 28th-minute shot really seemed like they were trying some of the same things that they did last week, where we were seeing from St. Louis a lot of sound defensive work in the channels and in the wings. We were putting bodies on the players who were trying to make these inward cuts, like Daniel Shallowy with his usual cut centrally, trying to create space quickly. I thought we were doing a pretty good job defensively of managing that. And then the opportunities came pretty quick and heavy for Sporting, where they had shots at 18, 28, 30, 31, 37, 41. I mean, it was 2 of them were on goal, but they were pretty consistently controlling the ball, so much so that by the end of the half, they were up to around, I think it was 61% possession, and it didn't start
Yeah.
off like that.
Yeah, it was 61 because I remember talking about it at halftime. And then at the end of the game, when I saw the final possession, I was like, wow, it went from Sporting at
Shifted.
61 to Sporting ended, I think it was 51-49 is what it ended. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it really shifted on the second half. But yeah, like we had talked about those first 15-20 minutes being key, and hopefully finding a goal that could change the game. But after after that period, still scoreless, and that's where Sporting KC like open up a little bit more and starting playing those long balls and created chances. And I was actually thinking, okay, we go to the half scoreless, and then maybe Bradley and his coaching staff will make some substitutions. And hey, it's a good result considering all the options that Sporting KC is creating. But obviously, that didn't go the way I thought about.
It was so close to happening though, because stoppage happened. You had a dead ball, and all you needed to do is kind of run the clock out a little bit, have one defensive stop, and then you're into half scoreless, and you can make those changes. You can make those modifications on a very different playing field. But as it ended up happening, 45 plus one. You get a throw in near midfield from Sporting. Sporting Kansas City progressed the ball quickly through their center backs to the opposite side of the field. They did a switch very, very quickly, moving the ball over. They got the ball to Gadi Kinda, up to Logan Ndembe, high up on their left wing as they're progressing it down their left side, opposite from where the throw in was. Things happen very quickly here. So I'm going to try to paint the picture. You can look at it on the replay. As Ndembe moved high up on the left wing, Watts was taking him on 1v1. Ndembe pulled it back to Gadi Kinda. Kinda played it quickly up to Daniel Shalhoui in the exact same space that Ndembe was occupying. Ndembe was cutting in deeper to the left channel, moving towards goal as Shalhoui had this. Shalhoui had the ball. Jared Stroud was watching Gadi Kinda on the wing. Akil Watts and Josh Yarrow moved on to Daniel Shalhoui out wide. Shalhoui finds a helping Alan Pulido moving into that left channel with Tim Parker shadowing him. So now you have Parker, Watts, and Yarrow all pulled in over there. As everyone's pulling towards Alan Pulido, you have Daniel Shalhoui running down the end line to draw folks away even further. And then you have Logan Ndembe, who's moving towards the middle of the field. Jabulu Blom is clearly watching him. It's his responsibility to guard Ndembe. And then as Pulido has the ball, Blom turns to face Pulido, and then Ndembe moves behind Blom into space where Pulido finds him. And at that point, you can freeze frame it. There is nothing but space between Ndembe and Berkey. And Ndembe takes a moment to gather himself. He gets the shot off, and it beats Berkey to his left, with Indiana Vassilev being the only person even close to Ndembe. And his responsibility was pretty clearly to guard the far side to make sure there wasn't a switch or a long ball played for an easy cross. So SKC goes up 1-0 in the half.
It's crazy. Logan Ndembe had not scored any goals in his professional career before last Sunday.
Now
And
he has two.
then one last Sunday, one yesterday, and important goals
Oh yeah.
to open up the scoring for his team, and just two goals. But yeah, great moves by him, and yeah, it's just a split second that Jabulo Blom turned to Pulido, and Pulido found the space, and then after that, it was not much City could do. But yeah, almost got to have a scoreless, but it's just I think that changes a lot emotionally. If you go to have scoreless, especially after Sporting dominating for 15, 20 minutes, compared to going 1-0 in the last play of the half, kind of sucks.
What's your opinion of Blom's kind of look back at Polito? Because I was seeing flashbacks to multiple times this year where you're seeing. I remember the fourth goal last week, Edu Leuven looking off of Shalhoui slipping in behind him. You're seeing not necessarily ball watching in general, but almost a lack of trust in other players to have their 1v1 responsibilities completed successfully. So I don't know if he was seeing Alan Polito being guarded by Tim Parker and thinking he wanted to take away, or he wanted to try and possibly get the ball away from Polito, even though Parker had the angle blocked off between Polito and goal. But either way, this seems like it happens fairly regularly against a team like this, where the 1v1s aren't enough, and St. Louis is almost intrinsically thinking we need to get a second player on this defensively, and then it puts pressure on every single other player on the field to mark a player that's suddenly left to his own devices, and it doesn't typically work out. And I'm struggling. I think of all the things that I've seen St. Louis do defensively as far as allowing goals, this is the thing I'm struggling to understand, is how this can keep happening, where you're having the ball played quickly. You're almost refusing to get into a low block scenario when this occurs and put numbers in the box. You're trying to just come out and play 2v1s everywhere on the field, which is just consistently leaving these fast players open to get in behind you.
Yeah, it is. I see it as it's like a split second decision. Like, do I continue following Ndembe, or do I try to take Pulido's play out? And yeah, it made me think about Ndembe's first goal last week. That there were like 5, 6 players around him, and not around him, but around Pulido, and then
Yeah.
Ndembe had all that space. And same thing, Blom turn, and Pulido, his awareness. That's one of the qualities he has. He creates a space and field awareness, and he saw the open space and passed it to Ndembe, and the rest was history. But yeah, I think it's a split second decisions. But as you were saying, maybe just think more about trusting your teammates and staying with your assignment, because if you don't get to that other player, then you're gonna leave a player unmarked, and that's what happened.
So a defensive miscue and an unfortunate going into the half, because up until that point, the stats kind of show that while St. Louis wasn't producing anything offensively, the game was being played more akin to something they're used to. First half, we had 39% possession for St. Louis. There's only a 0.07 expected goals to SKC's 0.4. That includes 3 shots with none on target by St. Louis, 7 shots with 3 on target from SKC. And on that goal we just got done talking about, there was a 0.08 expected goals, but a 0.41 post shot expected goals. And the post shot expected goals is a fun stat. It's based on how likely the goalkeeper is to save the shot. These are
Okay.
only on shots on target, and it's how likely is the goalkeeper is to stop this. That's why just about every single time you see this, the XG might be significantly low, but the PSXG, post shot expected goals, is going to be a lot higher. In fact, when we talk about these next 2 goals in the second half, Daniel Shalhoub, spoiler alert, has a 0.94 PSXG for the shot that he had. But getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, the second half changed a lot, Santi, not just from a possession perspective, but when you bring in Celio Pompeu in at half, the 46th minute for Sam Adeniran, you're not only taking out Sam, who had been ineffective for a huge portion of the first half, but you're changing the entire style of how you're progressing the ball up. And Bradley Carnell said this after the game, that there was an intentionality between the different styles of subbing in Celio for Sam, and it relates to how you're progressing the ball up. You're not getting any service into Sam in that first half. There's nothing that's progressing the ball up over the top that's allowing him to be any part of the offense. So you bring in a guy like Celio Pompeu, who is the best dribbler per 90 in MLS. He doesn't have very many minutes compared to a lot of these other top tier players, but if you need a guy to progress the ball up the field with the ball at his feet, Celio is the player to do that. And it seemed from every single stat that you look at, from possession, from shots, from chance creations, that he did his job, and he did his job pretty well in the second half. And I'm not even talking about the goal that he scores later on, but the opportunities that he creates. Because we're talking pretty quickly here in the 58th minute, his cross to Klaus had the highest PSXG chance on Klaus's header. This was our highest PSXG that we had in the entire game. 0.42 was on Klaus's header in the 58th minute. And so putting that shot on goal was our best chance at a single goal. You had another opportunity that Celio created with the ball on the floor, crossing it to Klaus that was just out of his reach, past Tim Melia. And then you had a sub that comes in 65, Nico for Stroud, that further changes things, moves some players around the field, shifts up how we're approaching things. I saw Nico as kind of an underneath second striker, almost a right winger up next to Klaus. I think they called him a second striker on the broadcast. And then you have Indiana Vassilev move over a little to the right side. You drop Leuven back a little bit to the left, maybe still playing his 10, maybe a dual 10 between Leuven and Vassilev. But you're getting a lot of guys skilled with the ball at their feet. You're giving probably your best shot at converting something with a lot of successful goal scorers that can move the ball up in different ways. You just weren't able to materialize much of it because in that span between the 65-minute sub and the goal that Shalhoub scores at 73, you only have one shot, and that's Indiana Vassilev. Or you have 2 shots. Indiana Vassilev at 67 and Celio Pompeu at 72, both blocked. So there's chances getting created, a couple in this opportunity, but you're not clearing space in for anything to find net. And then the dagger happens at 73. So before that dagger, did you feel like there was a change in the stadium? Because you were there, you were calling it. Did you feel like there was a dagger or some kind of a difference in the air in the second half for City?
Yeah, for sure. With Celio coming in, everything changed, and yeah, like the fans were loud like the whole time, the City fans that were there, but yeah, like I felt like okay, things are turning around, and it's gonna be a matter of minutes before the team finds a goal, and then with Nico coming, you had all that volume, and to me it was like okay, this is going to be one of those where City gets the equalizer, or since City has so many people attacking and pushing for that equalizer, Sporting is going to find a counter attack, have a good transition, and score that second goal. That in the end it was the dagger for City.
The dagger comes in the 73rd minute. Daniel Shalhoub is the one who's the goal scorer, but he basically just cleaned up what occurred before him. The play progressed with St. Louis pressuring. I mean, St. Louis continued their chance creations with an Edu Leuven cross from our left side, followed by a Josh Yarrow header to keep the ball in the attacking half. SKC won a 50-50 ball with ball was on the ground, bouncing around for a few times. It went between Alan Pulido, Johnny Russell, Jabulu Blom, Edu Leuven, all fighting for it at midfield, about halfway in the attacking third for St. Louis. And the ball just falls to Johnny Russell, and he starts sprinting past Edu Leuven, Jabulu Blom with the ball. There's no City player to his outside. There's only Remy Walter near him. Josh Yarrow is the one in front of him to meet him in open space in SKC's attacking third. But Johnny Russell's able to slip the ball outside and past Josh Yarrow, almost an outside through ball, to Gadi Kinda, who's running parallel centrally, picks up the ball. He's basically on his own. Akil Watts is the only player back as Blom and Leuven are trailing him the entire time. With Akil Watts the only man back, he's clearly guarding Daniel Shalhoub on the far side, but with no other option, he has to step up and try to block Gadi Kinda. And when Kinda sees Akil Watts move towards him, he slides it past Berkey to Shalhoub, who has basically an empty net. Like I said earlier, a 0.94 post-shot expected goals, which you can hardly get higher than that. It was a layup for him, to use a basketball term, and making it 2-1. Now, two things on this that I saw. Not just the finish, because the finish was elementary. It was Leuven appearing to stop sprinting to Gadi Kinda as the pass left Johnny Russell. Now, it's debatable if Leuven would have got there in general, but I watched this a few times back because I was really curious how this really occurred. And on the broadcast, they made a big deal about Akil Watts keeping Gadi Kinda onside. After the play, Edu Leuven definitely looked back to the sideline official just to confirm there wasn't an offside call. It really seemed like Leuven was banking on an offside call, which probably a lot of people were as well. Jabulu Blom, I'm sure one of them. But on that note, it was really Akil Watts that actually kept Gadi Kinda onside with his trailing. And he received a lot of criticism from Taylor Twellman on the call to not have that awareness to just take a half step back, or whether it was his momentum carrying him forward, or thinking multiple responsibilities. You've got Shalhoub behind you.
Yeah.
Kinda looks like he's sprinting up. Do you need to make a move on him? I mean, we're talking about the splittest of second decisions, and it's unfortunate that it just goes that close to Kinda remaining on side, and then Watts having to make that decision of you have to leave Shalhoub to go for Kinda, and then Shalhoub's left open.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, after you watch it on the replay, you see multiple things that could have happened. But going back to the beginning of the play, there were like 2 or 3 second ball opportunities that City ended up not getting, and same thing as last week, that the team was losing on those second, third ball opportunities, and I saw the same on that goal. Like somebody called out. Actually, I think it was. Doyle. He said that Johnny Russell, before finally getting that ball, he touched the ball like 3 more times.
Yeah, and our friend Chris Gebhardt in the chat is saying how we talked last week about trying to get quantity over quality in some of the shots and creating a lot of those massive volume opportunities to get second chances, to keep the ball in the attacking third. And the way this play started was almost the exact opposite of what we really wanted to see, where we didn't get those second chance opportunities. We couldn't keep the ball in the attacking third to keep the pressure on the goal. And then we were caught in a counterattack, not necessarily with players high up, but just the transition defense and not being able to hold our lines properly. And it led to what ended up being the dagger. The game wasn't over after that. I mean, there was definitely deflation out of every single one of the fans. I'm sure in the stadium you guys felt that way. I know at home it was just the biggest letdown in you could possibly imagine to have that happen. But the game progressed. We brought in Tomas Ostrak for Akil Watts. SKC had some subs, one of which was a pretty significant injury, it seemed, by Daniel Rosero. where it was kind of an odd play in the 85th minute. Salio, I think he kneed Rosero in the face. Rosero kind of went down for a tackle. He looked to trip up Salio, coming with both of his feet between his left leg, and then Salio kind of tried to jump over and I guess kneed him in the face. I'm not quite sure what ended up happening there, but with the bloody nose and the seeming head injury, Rosero was carted off. And I mention all that because what happened from there led directly into the next play, which is the Hope Springs Eternal play, right? 86th minute, Salio Pompeu does the magic, and it all starts with the free kick by Edu Leuven. This was headed away to Jabulu Blom, and in the exact opposite way, where we send balls in, we hope for second chances. This one pans out, but in the most unlikeliest of ways. When Blom receives the ball away from the Leuven free kick, he plays it over to the right wing with Salio. Salio has the ball. He pulls it one step back, sets it up with his left foot on an in-swinging ball, sails it past Tim Malia's right side to the left corner, and to the stun of everybody, pulls St. Louis to within one. What did you think of that shot?
Oh my God, what a goal! When I was calling the game, I thought it was a cross, and all of the sudden, like you could see, oh my God, it's going in, and it ended up being a golazo. And he was asked post game if it was a
Yep.
shot or a cross, and I said, yeah, it was a shot. Maybe I didn't intend for that shot to go all the way there, but hey, it happened, you know.
Yeah,
But
I'm
yeah,
glad he clarified that too, because that was a
yeah.
topic of discussion.
Yeah, but it gave everybody hope because yeah, it was the 86th minute, but with Rosero's injury and with other stoppages that happened during the half, I was thinking it has to be at least 10 minutes. Let's hope the four official shows that and that they saw that during the half and ended up with 12 minutes. And
And
at
more.
that point, I was like, okay, it's going to happen, another goal, and then we go to the lottery of PKs, and we know that maybe Sporting KC has the upper hand with Team Milia, but anything can happen. But that changed momentum again, definitely.
Yeah, and the way that St. Louis had been playing in the second half, where you're having the possession skew massively towards St. Louis, it was the exact opposite, 39 to 61, and it ended up being 61 to 39. St. Louis possession in the second half. We had more XG than they did. We had just a literal dozen shots, with two being on goal in the second half, to Sporting's just one shot and one on goal. Like, we had so many more opportunities than they did, whether you want to say they were high XG or not. This was the type of game that we needed to see for the full 90 from St. Louis, this volume based approach. And it was clear that the momentum had swung to St. Louis in the second half. You have the stops and starts with the injuries. The goal comes really late, unfortunately. And the transition goal was the dagger, like we said. We go to 12 minutes, at least 12 minutes. It ended up being 14 or 15
Yeah.
in stoppage. We had only one shot in that stoppage time. It was a Salio Pompeu 90+2 from 25 yards out. Ended up being blocked, so didn't have any shots on goal. But you had that excitement, and I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, you want to be competitive in a match like that. And I felt that regardless of how we started in the first half, regardless of the lack of offense just existing in the first half, they at least made a run of it. They made a game of it in the second half, and they went out fighting. They went out with their hearts on their sleeves like we hoped they would. Obviously not the result we wanted, but I think it was nice to see this calculated style of play change occurring in the second half and it working. There's a criticism that Bradley Carnell has gotten throughout the season of some of his tactical approaches, the timings of his subs, and I haven't seen anybody look too much into what he could have done differently from a Sam Salio perspective, but making the sub at halftime and it working as well as it did, the only problem you could really point to is a lack of finishing. And to that note, I think looking at some of the players overall, one stat and one person that you have to look to is Edu Leuven. 5 shots, none on target. Not even XG related, but he didn't have any shots on target. Some of his free kicks were a little wide compared to what you were used to seeing earlier in the season, and it's led some of the fan base to wonder how much that injury that kept him out of action in the middle of the season has lingered.
Yeah, yeah, and he hasn't been the same after the League's Cup break, and yeah, I wonder that too. If maybe the injury, he never fully recovered, but it was good enough to play. But you can see that it's not the same, and yeah, like yesterday, some of those shots going like way over the bar or wide. Even there was at least one corner kick that was also bad. So yeah, I have a feeling there is still something there. It wasn't the first set of Leuven from the first half of the season, but yeah, at least I like that Carnell put him in that 10th role, and he had more freedom to play on offense, but it didn't pan out in terms of shots on target. But yeah, I like the team did like basically died fighting, was competitive in that second half, and it wasn't a lopsided score like that first game.
Yeah, and again in the chat, Billy's spot on. Celio's banger saved the collective spirit of the fan base. It would have been infinitely more depressing heading into the offseason getting shut out. And
Yeah,
that's why that's why I want to spend so much time talking about Celio. I said at the end of the game, knee jerk reaction is Celio needs to be offered a contract extension, and I think he's up with an option. But
yeah,
regardless, Celio Pompeu should be on this team next year, and he should be getting more minutes. There's a conversation that's starting to occur of how sustainable is the Lutz Bradley Carnell style of play, given the drop off that we saw at the end of the season. And Celio Pompeo has the ability to be that answer. He's going to be a discussion point this offseason of his style of play can either bridge that kind of gap between the high pressing, long ball kind of plays and the verticality to be that explosive playmaker with the ball at your feet and what he can do with that. We saw a lot of potential, and we've seen glimpses of it throughout this season. But maybe we'll see more next year, and I look forward to that conversation. But another player who showed himself, and he kind of did so just under the radar because there weren't any massive shot creating chances that you really pointed to this player is Indiana Vasilev. Led the team with 9 shot creating actions. We're talking the beginning of the game with his crosses, talking in the second half with his opportunities to Klaus and to Leuven. He had a shot off target at the 76th minute. He had so much involvement with the ball, and whether you look to the change in the second half, Indy and Leuven playing as kind of a double 10 underneath Joaquini, Klaus, and Celio, or what you want to read into it, I think Indy's playmaking abilities were further highlighted here, and we've seen that consistently throughout the year. Indiana Vasilev needs to be more involved in the offense. He needs to be higher up on the field. I love his defensive work, but he's too talented with the ball to be given too many defensive responsibilities in a successful team.
yeah. Obviously, when he was put in that number 6 role at the beginning of the season, he learned, and he was able to play there. But he's more dangerous when he's on offense. So I think that's one of the areas where maybe, and I know we're gonna talk more about this in another podcast, but to me that's one of the areas where the team needs to look into, and maybe have another reliable number 6 whenever it wants to have two double whenever it wants to have double pivot formation with Jabulo Blom. But yeah, in the yeah, you don't see that like on the scoreline, but yeah, he had a good game, and as you said, under the radar. But yeah, it's you just think about all the things that um didn't happen yesterday. But I'm still happy that um, at the end the team had that great attitude, and it's just one shot that didn't go in, or one more chance that wasn't created in those 15 minutes after Celios goal.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like the way that the team finished the game.
We could talk for days about some of the player performances and good or bad. Klaus, the way he played, and the way Sam started, Nico's involvement in the second half, Tim Parker's opportunities on goal and some of these set pieces. The discussion that Taylor Twellman tried to have at the end of the game of, do you want to put Tim Parker in alongside Klaus at the top to have another body in the field? Yeah, he said that.
But he
And
was up. He was up there. I was
in
like for a couple
moments,
of minutes. I was like, "Wow, what is Tim Parker
he's
doing up there?"
he stayed high after some of the set pieces. Yeah, he didn't track back. He stayed high to provide a big body. But I want to end the player conversation with Celio Pompeu. It's not just the goal. It's not just dribbling with the ball at his feet. It's in one half of play. He was tied for second in shot creating actions with Blom. He had 4. He was second in shots with 3 to Edu Leuven's 5. He was tied first with Leuven, Hebert, and Stroud for 2 progressive carries of greater than 10 yards towards the goal. He was tied second in the team with Klaus in key passes with 2. He was tied first with Klaus for passes into the penalty area with 2. So, guy who plays for one half, putting himself in a position to be leading the team in all of these categories with all of the big names that we're used to seeing for the full 90. If you're going to end the season in a way that gives your fan base hope, Celio did it in this game for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel bad that his 2 goals have been in games the team ended up losing.
Yeah.
But yeah, great 45 minutes yesterday. I would love to see more of him next year. He had a stretch of games where he was starting or getting minutes as a sub, and then after some of the guys that were injured came back, Klaus, Leuven. At the same time, the team signed Nuke Torison. His minutes started to go down. He ended up playing for CD2 for a few games. But I think he proved that he deserves that contract extension and to get more minutes next year.
Totally agree. Santi, anything else from this game you want to discuss?
No, no. I think let's get past this game. Let's try to forget about it, and I'm sure later this week we will have more detail about what's going to happen with the team and the roster.
Yeah, we started this episode on as positive as we can get, looking back at some of the big accomplishments from City this year. We'll leave you with a hugely positive note. As we stated from the beginning, we try to cover more than just City on this pod, but soccer in St. Louis as well. And while this weekend was definitely not the result that any of us wanted, we wanted to congratulate the St. Louis University women's soccer team for winning their 6th straight Atlantic 10 championship after defeating LaSalle 3-0 this past weekend. Congrats to SLU and good luck in the NCAA tournament, where they were drawn today as we're recording this Monday as the number 6 seed and are going to host Indiana in the first round of the tournament. An absolutely amazing accomplishment and continued success for SLU's women's team in soccer in St. Louis.
Hey, and you know what that means? More soccer, more opportunities for fans to attend a game. So
I heard a rumor it might be Friday, but don't hold me to that because I don't think the date has been announced yet. When it is, we'll send it out on Flyovers account because we love following SLU, men's and women's, and this is an exciting accomplishment for them. Santi, this is, of course, our final Fallout show of the year. I know, speaking personally, it's been a pleasure and an honor to break down all these matches with you. And I can't wait to be back at it for our 4 different competitions that City's going to be participating in next year. Starting in February, we have the CONCACAF Champions Cup. We'll have MLS League play that likely starts at the end of February, but that schedule will be announced sometime in December. Then we have the US Open Cup, Leagues Cup, and you never know what else they might announce. We might get something else thrown in. You really never know what MLS might do.
yeah, no,
But
I really enjoy doing this with you, and look forward to doing it again next year. For now, this is our last flyover fallout.
we're going to take a 3-month hiatus, and don't forget to tune in to Flyover Footy again this Thursday. We're going to be recording a full season review and breakdown of St. Louis City on their inaugural MLS season. We're going to go as deep as we need to be in all these games. We've already discussed it, and I think what we're going to do is we'll have this look back at the season, and we're going to try to spread out some content going into the offseason. So we have a full roster breakdown coming. We have MLS rules. We have, before they start to occur in the offseason, we'll preview the offseason calendar that includes dates for when options need to be extended and confirmed for players who have team options, for bona fide offers when you offer a new, better contract, for all these key offseason dates. We're going to have all of that, roster breakdowns, speculation, analysis, everything that we can do this offseason to keep you up with St. Louis City, to prepare you for the 2024 season. We love doing it, and we thank you guys so much for being a part of it, for listening, because we wouldn't be able to do this if you weren't listening. So thank you again for that. Santi, thanks as always for joining, and thanks for doing such an amazing job as a Spanish broadcaster for the team. I know from social media to everything that you've done here and on Thursday's show, like you add so much to this community, and I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be a part of it with you.
Oh man, thanks so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's so kind. But yeah, I had really enjoyed this year and doing this with you guys, doing the Spanish broadcast, being on other shows, even other podcasts or other shows that cover the league. It's been great to have that experience, and cannot wait to do it again. But thanks all of you guys for listening to us, and all of you guys that are active in the chat. We really appreciate that you guys also provide great input.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on our last Flyover Fallout of 2023. We'll talk to you soon. And as always, go City.
Vamos City.